Today we're going to be looking at a build of Scizor Lost Box that I've been enjoying in the Obsidian Flames format. I think this is a really underexplored card. I know we already have Flapple in the format, which shares the same attack as Scizor, which does 10 plus 50 more damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play that has an ability. But I think that Scizor having the big bulky 140 hit points is absolutely massive, and even Scyther having 80 hit points is much better than Applin and Flapple, unfortunately, because it means this attacker is usable against the Lost Zone Tina matchup and the Mirror match at times. But I do think this attack is very powerful right now. Obviously, it has weakness into PAL, which means this is going to be a huge hitter as a single prize threat in that matchup, which is excellent because sometimes just the creativity of Sable and Cram aren't that powerful into PAL matchup. So this is really good against like that Palkia, Bibarel deck, really good against just pure PAL Baxcalibur. And this also offers a huge amount of damage in the Mew matchup and Lugia matchups. Other matchups that Lost Box in the past has really had to play multi-prizes for to try and deal with those higher hit point threats. So I think Scizor is a really solid card in the format right now and supports the sort of early game of Cram, the sneaky Sableye throughout the game, and he just offers an extra dimension to the deck, which I think is really powerful in that sort of mid-game stage before Charizard starts getting very powerful. So, and especially because, you know, Lost Zone Charizard has started to decline just because of the amount of Lost City in Mew decks, as well as like Arc builds as well. So having just many other attacking threats in the deck, and Charizard can be just that one attack bomb, basically, is a really cool thing to have. And I've really enjoyed playing this archetype. In order to make a stage 1 work in the Lost Zone deck, we are trying to play Ultra Balls in here, so I can actually search out Scizor as and when I need it. And that makes Bibarel a far better card, right? It gives us the search for Bibarel in the first place, but also gives us that hand thinning for Bibarel with the 3 Ultra Ball and the 2 Lost Vacuum. We can reduce our hand size here and there for top-ups with Industrious Incisors, which is excellent, and safeguards this aggressive early prize-taking deck from hand disruption as well. So I really am enjoying seeing this core here. Bibarel really topping up on cards is fantastic. It means that when we are working towards these late game combinations with Charizard and Luminous Energy, for example, Luminous being a card that kind of stitches this deck together as well because it's working for Zard, Sableye, and Scizor, it's a really nice option to have in here. I could see myself adding in a Fire Energy as well to the deck just because of how powerful Charizard is, but this is really an experimentation around Scizor for the most part, and I have really enjoyed it in the games I've played with it so far. Seems like a very versatile attacker, and just, again, after a Spit Innocently, is oftentimes finishing off multi-prize threats in a number of matchups. We are playing a number of Stadium Bounces and Vacuum, of course, so that we can get rid of Path of the Peak. Ironically, there will be things like Arceus, which shuts off its own ability with Path to reduce Scizor's damage output. So this can bounce those stadiums so that Scizor is dealing its maximum damage. But of course, these are also in the deck to enable Charizard in the late game, but also having Lost Vacuums, just like any other Lost Zone deck, helps us get to Sableye more quickly in those mirror match situations. So I think this is actually a really well-rounded build and a very solid way to play a single prize Lost Zone deck. I'm playing a couple cards also in here, like the Echoing Horn, which has obvious synergy already with the deck with Sableye, and with like Zard boss plays, of course, but also just having the extra 50 damage mod essentially for Scizor is very powerful. A couple of the question marks here, really. The Beach Court is something that we've seen sort of phase out of Lost Zone in the last few months, but I think it makes the most sense in this sort of 1 energy drop per turn deck, especially when like Klara is oftentimes going to be a late game supporter for us, where we just recycle the Sableye itself, attach to it, and then we're always looking for a Switch card or just a Beach Court to fill in the gaps here so we can continue our chain of attackers. I think this deck has a ton of viability, and I think it's covering a lot of bases, and just having Scizor as an extra attacking threat in the deck can force Gust from the opponent, which is not hand disruption, which is always good for a Lost Zone player. Having Bibarel in the deck gives us a bit more robustness against hand disruption, which is what a number of decks hold on to have a way of slowing down Lost Box altogether. So I think this is just a really cool, really well-rounded archetype, and I think Scizor is super underutilized in the format, and I think it's very powerful. So yeah, enjoy the games and let me know what you think about this sort of new budding archetype and what you would change about this list, because it's still very raw, still very new, and I'm still making changes as we go. So cheers. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. So it looks like we're going second in this first game. Our hand's not too shabby. not super fast, but at least we have Beach Court Nest Ball, so I can have some Comfey dips. And we're up against a Gardevoir, by the looks of things. This should be something we absolutely feast. I'm going to be pretty plain and simple about it. Scizor's an extra single prize attacking threat that we have to already a pretty decent roster with the Lost Zone attackers of Cram and Sableye, and we even have a Bibarel fallback, so that sort of Iono and Prey option that we sometimes see from Guardian players is kind of limited, and almost their entire deck has an ability, so Scizor should be doing a pretty decent chunk. It's unlikely they'll be able to even get their like Zacian in the mix and hope to like collapse it away or anything like that. They basically just have nowhere to go in this matchup, I think. This should be a bread and butter, like very, very strong matchup for us. Their start wasn't too shabby. They got the double Rolts developed. They have the Mew in the active position. Small debates over whether or not I should play the Nest Ball first. I wanted to just see more and more basics, to be honest with you. So I wanted to hold the Nest Ball, and it's worked out fairly okay here. I've already retreated from the Beach Court, so we are just going to go for a Switch Cart here. So it looks like we're unable to get the early Cram attack, but I can get a cheeky energy drop onto Sableye here. The opponent will get the chance to Mysterious Tail once more. They're going to start with an Iono, though, which is helpful for us. We actually get into a really good hand from that. The opponent has Level Ball at their disposal now. They're going to start using some refinements by the looks of things. The standard stuff. Rolts come down, Manaphy comes down because they are seeing Lost Zone cards, I suppose. Makes sense. Attaching to the Mew's a little bit weird because I have the Beach Court already developed. Maybe they plan on bouncing it at some point, but no, they are just going to pass. So we're going to go for the Colress straight away. I'm going to keep our attackers around. The Vacuum, not hugely important here when I can just go for another Cram hit. Get a Nest Ball out of Scyther. Easy Fin of the VIP pass. And we're just going to go for an attach to Scyther and a Spit Innocently. I am playing the 80 hit point Scyther. These have Mac Cut. It can get rid of a special energy on the opponent's active. It's come in handy like here and there at times, but nothing massive. There is a 90 hit point Scyther though, so it's still a debate between the two. Let's see how the opponent reacts to the early prize being taken. Well, it's just going to be another Iono. Our hand was once again pretty large, so another decent choice from them. Going to see more Rolts developed. They probably need to start getting Cress in the mix as quickly as possible here if they want to have any chance of getting into a prize race whatsoever. Actually, Cress would be one of the main reasons why you would want a 90 hit point Scyther in the deck list. Because it's slightly less easy for them to Moonglow onto it. As it stands, it's looking like it's just more and more Curliers in the mix. Looks like they're going to retreat into Manaphy now that I've filled my bench. I'm surprised they're going for this retreat before drawing all their cards, right? Because they could have found, like, EX Cress in an ideal world, but they may not be playing towards it. Going to see the third Curlier evolve up. Going to see the refinement of the Psych Energy. So they've drawn a number of cards, but we are going to have a big gap in terms of the prize race, and I really don't know how they reduce that gap, to be honest with you. There's a Shining Arcana. I think all of their Rolts and Curlies have evolved this turn now. So I don't expect much from them. No, just a pass. And that's going to be pretty good for us, I think. We can retreat for free with Beach Court, and we do find a Colress. And with that Colress, we're getting to 10, so we really are threatening a lot now. Not too big on keeping this Scyther, actually. I probably should take either Rope or Metal Energy there. But we are keeping the Scyther around. And I'm just going to attach to a Comfey and evolve up now. Again, this is one of the things where we have just the threat of Sableye being so strong. Meaning it's maybe unlikely that they can target Scizor. And if they do, it means I still have Sableye available. So, like, a Gust play is really bad for them right now. It's really not doing much. And we are just so far ahead in the race. Like I said, already just the combination of Cram and Sableye is already a big challenge for Gardevoir. but having an extra attacker in the mix and having Bibarel in the mix, which admittedly we haven't developed just yet, will be massive for this matchup. And I think Gardy, I don't really know how Gardy combats an archetype like this outside of like slow starts and stuff. Yeah, it should be a pretty low percentage for them. As not really sure they have many ways of making like a great comeback here. They're going to need like reversal energies and such, and probably again Cress is their best friend for a short while, but it's looking pretty good for us right now. Maybe attacking with the EX is not a bad shout at this stage. The Scizor would be dealing 210 damage, but it would play into Collapse Stadium as a potential play for them. We do see a Gardevoir EX finally come into play. Let's see, Fog Crystal, Psych Energy. Some more refining. They've got through the deck quite nicely. And actually they are going for pretty much the best line they could go for here, which is Swing with EX. Again, just double checking that there's no Collapsed having been played yet. And they are going to go for that Miracle Force. But with the Echoing Horn in hand, I very much could just be ignoring the EX all game now and just go for a constant flurry of single prize knockouts. We can pretty happily get rid of this Scyther, I think. We still have Charizard as well, obviously. So if I put the Gardevoir EX on either 60 or 80 damage playing around a Cress, again, we should just be in really good shape. But basically, we just have to take one prize a turn. I finally developed the Bibarel as well to make us even more robust. And again, there's the threat of Sableye, there's a threat of Scizor. How do they also deal with the threat of Bibarel? I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. We have 3 prize cards remaining. They are currently 3 easy prizes on the board for us to take. So, not seeing much of a way that Gardy can come back now when hand disruption isn't really an option for them. And that's normally like the bread and butter of trying to re-establish a board against Lost Zone. See the Rod recycle some stuff. Another Rocks gets into the mix. We actually do see the collapse, and I can happily get rid of a Comfey here. So we're going to keep on the Sableye route. And I know Scizor hasn't done like a huge amount, but it limits their options even more, right? It just means that like a Zacian couldn't come down to make the same like Collapse Stadium plays and whatnot. But really it's just showing the build as just being so robust into this matchup. Yeah, I mean, I've now set up the Sableye 2 prize knockouts for next turn. So they have to take out the active Pokemon. They have to try and disrupt us out of a Sableye play here. I've also damaged the active EX enough for a Scizor to take a knockout, so that had to retreat. So even if I have nothing else going for me this turn, I have Bibarel to redraw me cards, and I can just go for a Spit Innocently play. And then I'm still just in like such good shape for Charizard or Sableye to close the final prize. And they have 3 individual prize cards to take, so they're just never winning this game, right? We're going to top up on cards, get that flower selecting, even get our next Cram developed, why not? Going to open up this board space by the looks of things, get the Sableye out. And that should be the game, right? Oh, for some reason I just don't take game here. Yeah, I had game with Luminous, right? I just go 60-60. But yeah, we had game, like, there was no way we were losing the game, once again. Let's get into our second game then, and this time we're up against a Lost Zone deck by the looks of things, and straight away the flower selecting tells us it's a Lost Zone Tina, because a Tina hit the zone, and also the Grass Energy Retreat helps us out there. And our start's not great. Starting Scyther's not ideal. We at least have VIP Pass Rope, but again, it's kind of looking like a Comfey and Prey, because I really wouldn't like to use the Iono this early on. I obviously prefer to be Colressing in a sort of lost mirror where Cram is still good for our race and stuff. Pick up a boss as well, that's not ideal. So Scizor is actually an interesting attacker in this matchup because the opponent naturally has to put down, you know, Comfeys and Greninja very often. So we're typically around that like 160 threshold quite naturally in the deck. So it should make life a little easier for us. I'm not going to go for the early Cram here, knowing that I can't Colress anyway, unless I hit it off exactly this. So I'm just going to take the Switch Cart, and it looks like I'm probably just going to play Iono here. There's maybe a reason to hold Iono just for higher value later, but I feel like I just need to get into my Colresses at this stage. We can actually play one more VIP pass. And we're just going to grab the Cram and pass here to threaten the response KO on his Cram. We see Hisuian from the opponents. Going to see the flower selecting. Into the Jet Energy, the classic Tina plays, which means they're going for a Cram hit rather than a Abyss Seeking here, quite obviously. We're blocking Greninja from doing any scary stuff right now with the Manaphy early. Do actually see the boss's orders, so they're going to go for a boss Cram play, and that's a little bit more spicy. We can evolve up into Bibarel. And we do get the early flower selecting into Scizor. We're going to go for another flower selecting here. Ooh, rough choice. Cart versus Horn. Both really good cards in the matchup, actually. Obviously, reducing the Sableye shenanigans the opponent does to us in one corner, and in the other corner it's us getting spooky with Horn in the late game. I'm going to go for an early Ultra Ball here just to develop another Scyther, because again, if I can do this before a Sableye gets developed, these are quite annoying, chunky single prizes for the opponent to deal with. So they're really good in the sort of interim where I've had a really slow time of things, not found Colress over 2 turns, and I think in like a normal situation here, where I would just most likely be Sableyeing second in this matchup, I'd probably just be losing the game outright. But because I'm using Scizors in the mix and just being these annoying high hit point single prizes, it's giving me a chance right now, I'd say. The opponent's developing an early enough path here. And they're going to rod back some energy. Looks like they have Gate in mind. Also going to see that Nest Ball, or are they just going for a Cram reload? Yeah. Alright, and it's just going to be another Spit Innocently. So we can go straight into the Scizor. Going to Bibarel for a couple of cards again, so I prefer to not play this Iono right now, ideally. But do we have many better options? Based on their Lost Zone count, do I want to take anything else out here? Don't really want to bring anything into play, I don't think. Possibly just like Sableye or something. I am still going to go for the Iono here. A 4-card hand is still a little bit awkward for them to deal with, especially with Path developed on their own side. It might make it more difficult for them to make some Sableye reaches this turn. We finally draw into our Colresses as well. So we can start getting to that route of 10. We are playing, you know, the quad Colress and the 2 Vacuum, so we can try and do the sort of traditional get to 10 as quickly as possible, Sableye, Sableye, Sableye kind of idea. Especially with Klaras, that's pretty easy enough to do. And with a late game Zard option into the Tina, the matchup again is fairly favoured. I would say. It's just been a strange matchup where I've been Colressless, so Scizor kind of had to take the wheel here. I'd say it's a bit of an unorthodox use of the Scizor. But looks like the Iono worked, and the opponent just goes Gate Pass, which is amazing for us. It means we're going to go a prize ahead quite happily here. And that puts us in a much better position because we can try and use the likes of our Charizard later. We still have that Echoing Horn play available to us as well if we start getting Sableye in the mix later. We're just going to go for a quick selecting. In and out of our... I guess I could go Cram here as well now, right? Yeah. Pretty decent window to Cram. Because now that I'm ahead, I don't mind him going Cram for Cram or just Sableye into the Cram. So I may as well just keep these Scizors as threats on the bench. The opponent will use their Gate now, and they're actually going to jet into their Tina and just shred through the Cram. So there's only 2 abilities on the board right now, and one of them is being turned off by Path. So actually, my Scizors are only doing 60 damage at the moment. We do Colress, and we get both Sableyes here. Possibly a small debate around that Ultra Ball. But because we have good old Horn in the deck, I think we can start going aggressive, just Sableye every turn now. I think the classic 8 on Sableye, 4 on Comfey is looking pretty delicious here. Because, again, even if they... Okay, I'm going to put... Okay, maybe a little bit more subtle with the damage here. Possibly a little bit weaker to them finding Switch Carts. Because if the opponent goes Greninja R2 Sableyes specifically and is able to Switch Cart their Comfey, they could beat us here. As it happens, they have Colress Requiem, so a far less scary turn. That's what they would have needed to have stayed in the game. But now we just have to dig towards Horn, and we have a 6-card deck, so it's there. We can just grab the Comfey back and do the Sableye shenanigans. So again, Scizor's been like a bit part player in both these games so far, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's like that threat, and it did make the opponent play differently on a couple turns, so definitely doing okay. It's a much bigger selling point in like the Chen PAL and the PAL Gear matchups and a few other things like that. So not necessarily the matchups for the Scizor to show up and be the best. But we've got a matchup into the Rapid Strike box now as well. Another interesting sort of cat and mouse game where they're a very ability reliant deck, but they can sort of limit their evolutions at times. Limit our opportunity to use that Scizor until they're like pinging a ton of stuff down. So something for us to keep in mind. We are going to have a pretty reasonable first turn. Get the early select in. Get the early Scyther drop. We're holding on to Colress, which is nice. And the opponent has a very limited turn. They just go for a 40 damage Surf into us. We're going to go for a big Colress here. We can evolve immediately into Bibarel, which is nice. We do get the Switch Carts, which is actually going to be huge here, and not falling prey to an early Yoga Loop. We are going to get the early bench attach onto Sableye, so I can draw a couple more from Bibarel. We're going to take the Switch Cart in this instance. They are obviously very powerful. A bit of a whiff on Rope. That would have been pretty ideal. Just deny the Octillery. But we will get some prep damage onto the Inteleon. Going to see Ultra Ball from the opponent. They're going to grab that Urshifu. Gonna see the Rapid Strike Search for all the big VMAX. Then gonna start getting some damage in on the Comfeys. And they're actually going to zero card hand here. Obviously they're getting back the energy. This seems like a really good window. If I can get to 10 this turn, if I could just deal with Octillery here, it would be pretty massive. And those extra switch cards probably help me in that endeavor. Easy choice there. Getting to find another switch card as well is massive. Just huge heals going on here. Ultra Ball versus Metal is an interesting one. Maybe I'm thinking Ultra Ball Manaphy here. I don't know. This is just respecting that a top deck or a prize card was really good for the opponent. I think the Lost Mine's always happening. But it's whether or not I... it's really what resource goes if I go for this line. Yeah, I see no Manaphy, so I suppose I just take Scizor. Well, Scizor's not really good right now. Yeah, we'll just take another Sableye, knowing that we're at 10. So I guess I'm vacuuming away Beach Court here. And that's the good news. The good news is we're getting to 10 early. And we can get the Octillery out of here, denying the Karina's Focus top up. And meaning that they need to have something from these 3 cards to be doing anything this turn. See the Rapid Strike Energy. And I think that means they're retreating rather than attacking. They should have just clicked 100 Furious Blows here, right? But it looks like they've probably just done that wrong. But I think if they're doing nothing else this turn than just hitting with either their VMAX or just their regular V there, you know that they're crumbling as an archetype. And sometimes just the early Sableye can do that in the matchup. So yeah, I think it was still mostly just the Sableye show. It's still a Lost Box deck at the end of the day. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on Scizor down below, because I do think it has a lot of potential. And also just playing a Lost Box deck with Bibarel felt amazing. I'm going to try more Charizard with that, because I think that's also got untapped potential. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Fun to explore with Scizor. I'm going to be trying out some of the other new cards from Obsidian Flames as well that are sort of hidden gems. So stay tuned for those. But for now, it's been Joe from OmniPoke. I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.